Alright, let's get started. So, part 2 of Titan's Graveyard Environment Challenge. We're going to talk about composition. I think we've covered all of the other stuff in day 1, which was controlling the color of the environment, light environment business. But now let's talk a little bit about composition and how to keep the viewer's eyes trapped inside. So the point is to keep them trapped. That's the point. Like you sneak them into the painting with the beautiful thumbnail that draws them in, and then they're just stuck. That's your goal with an environment. That's your goal with any painting, but totally your goal with an environment. And what we have to do in order to accomplish that, in order to keep the viewer trapped inside the canvas, is to not allow the line of sight, which is controlled by detail, to meander outside of the canvas edges. The canvas edges really aren't at the edges of the canvas. The canvas edges are right here. Alright, this is the canvas. Here, nothing of serious detail concentration should exist on this side here. Everything should have ended by here, and not just ended smack dab, just ended in a line of detail. It tapers towards the end here. So what you've done here is that you've attracted my attention outside of the canvas, so I'm just like, hey, beautiful painting, dude. I'm just going to go ahead and just go on to the next painting. I'm not going to spend time looking at your stuff, and that's what makes an unsuccessful composition. So how do we stop that from happening? Well, first and foremost, we need to make sure that this detail here gets removed. And so we remove that by bringing that contrast down. And detail is created by shrinking your brush and by contrast. Contrast and brush size and edge sharpness all create detail. Write that back at me. Write that back to me. Does darkening the edges of the canvas work? Yeah, it works, but it's just too much of a quick fix. You don't have to darken the edges of the canvas so much, but still have the detail. It's not just about darkening the edges of the canvas, basically. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to blend this business away. While trying to keep some of those edges that you have. But all of this sparkle needs to go. Needs to say bye-bye. Because what it's doing is it's attracting my attention, and it's the biggest no-no. You've reached the edges of the canvas. The character, the point of interest is right here. This is the only point of interest. Nothing else is as interesting as this character. Everything about him says, hey, look at me. Even the colors you've used to paint him, which are entirely warm, compared to the cool, light environment. So this all needs to go. Even though this is at the height of the canvas, even though this is at the very in front of the light, and it's in a position where you might have spent a lot of time working on this, it does not warrant this much detail. So darken, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to darken this first and foremost, starting at the edges and then tapering out. And as soon as I do this, you will notice everything suddenly comes together. And you really do need a trained eye. If you don't see it, you don't have enough of a vocabulary in this department just yet. Next problem would be the light environment itself. You've got these really bright stars in the sky. So you treated them as stars, not as suns. So that's fine. Go ahead and do that. But what happens is suddenly if you have this random light, it doesn't belong to any light source, then it's just a random point of contrast that was not even vital to the plot of the composition of the painting. And so at that point you're just letting it sit there, distracting again away from the point of interest, which is the character here, who is saying, and you've chosen color specifically to say that this character is super important right now. Ah, fuck. Stupid lasso. Useless lasso. So let me just try to do this properly. So what we need to do is re-lasso this. Next time maybe I think I'll ask for PSDs. I just don't know how you guys would be uploading your files on the PSDs. I wouldn't want to don't want to force you guys just to all get Dropbox or something. So got rid of that, darkened that very nicely, brought that down, merged down. Alright, so what I need to do next is just darken this here. The light source, if this glow isn't around any of these stars and you already have some glows around these stars, there's really no point left to have that random glow. We need to refocus all our attention back to this middle heart, where the gut of the painting is. The center of the canvas is the gut of the painting, and that's where you need to focus all your attention. I feel like you spent way too many hours up here in this random ass corner of the painting, and you really let a lot of stuff fall off. So now that we've done that, let's go over here. And though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. Every lasso, I feel like I'm just gonna like lose it. Thank God you can edit a lasso selection. Okay. Damn it. Okay. And then over here, so what I'm going to do here is lighten the horizon just around the bottom. So assuming that the sun just rose and or just set or just rose, whatever, or is about to, or just set. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab this color, this lower atmosphere, this lower horizon level atmosphere color, and draw it back towards this part of the painting. I will re-blur all of this because it really isn't that important. But man, this lasso is such a butthole. I'm just going to darken the very tops. So what we're creating at this point is a line of sight that moves back towards the character. So you want to keep them trapped. You want like a whirlpool or a maelstrom of detail that keeps the character or keeps the viewer's eyes around the character's line of sight. What is the character? What is the character looking at? What is the object here looking at? It probably looks at this and then this and then this. So whatever's in their direct line of sight is over here. If he was just looking at the stars should have been the focus, but the stars aren't placed here. They're really distracting. And when I wrote stars, I didn't mean that. I meant like, large suns. But it's okay. Another thing that I've noticed is that the edge of this happens a lot here in your painting. The very end of this rock is perfectly aligned with the edge of this rock behind it, creating this awkward layering of edges, which is not in your favor at all. The edge of this rock is aligned with the edge of this rock. You need to have them perpendicular to each other. You can't have them create these perfect like adjacent edges. You need to have them create a more pleasing silhouette. So if the edge of one rock is placed so well that it kind of camouflages with the edge of another, you've made a mistake at this point, and you've confused and almost creating like an illusion of detail. So you want to get rid of that. Just like so that this rock can just sit where it sits and nothing else is interrupting it, and the other rock can just sit where it sits. These are all basic rules right now that we're covering. Really, really basic rules. These stars are way too big, almost the same size as the character here. Fuck, I didn't erase that red mark. Okay. Okay. So just with these corrections, let's take a look at the before and after. The eyes are somewhat trapped here, but see how before the eyes were drawn outside. You can't really tell unless you look at the God mode version. So see how the eyes just hover here and then just leave the canvas and run away. You want to trap the eyes back in here. So what's next is making sure you have no serious distraction in these areas. So what I'm going to do is I really just want to get rid of these stars completely and then place them somewhere else. And then probably 2 little white dots in the distance. Just like that, that's fine. You can get away with that. Let me sharpen that and give them a glow. No, that's too... Right. Just darken them just a little bit. There's so many clouds in the sky, I'm not even sure we would see them, but let's just say there was like a tiny little suspension right here between the clouds. So now we have to go back to the character. The light environment here, this smaller light is smaller than the greater light environment of the area, which is the light of the moon or the eerie glow of the environment or whatever it is. There's a brightness that is stronger than this, or else if this lamp was stronger than the entire environment's light source, then everything would be orange. Because when we light up an environment, we don't just take the brightness of the light source, creating that brightness, we take its color as well. So objects inherit the color and the intensity of any light shining on them. Write that back to me. Okay. So what I'm going to try to do here is using my tools of depth, my knowledge of depth, and my knowledge of how to create detail, which I showed you guys last class. I'm going to try to make it so that the eyes can get stuck here. I'm going to give them some more information to look at. So firstly, I'm going to bring in the contrast. So I'm going to throw in a nice little fog or something in that, something similar to that prop, and just throw it in there just like that. And then I'm going to separate it. Separate this part of the background as well, and throw some contrast this way. Okay. So all I'm doing here is giving the eyes something more to look at. I'm not going to blend away all of the edges either. What I'm doing here is deliberately trying to give the eyes some eye candy, and detail is eye candy. Contrast is eye candy. Sharp edges are eye candy. And that's it. That's the canon. That's the canon. You have to follow these rules when you're working in an environment. Yeah, you can spend time reading random ass tutorials by artists and magazines saying it's all about the atmosphere and the feeling you feel inside your spine. You can go ahead and go to there, but I'm telling you the actual sciences behind it. This is what happens. These are the formulas. It's set in stone. All right. Atmosphere is awesome. You know, making a what's it called again? A mood chart. That's cool. Go for it. That's really good planning. That's inspired. But don't think that that's the only thing that'll carry your painting. A couple of warm colors and some random props plopped anywhere, plopped somewhere. You have to make sure that these props are one, reinforcing the theme, and the theme is most importantly reinforced by the physics. And the physics, just basic, not even physics, just technical rules of what happens in compositions and what attracts eyes the most. So what I've done is remove the contrast from this random corner that makes no sense whatsoever. If you were a photographer, why would you place the most important part of the paint of the photograph up here in this corner? There's no point to it, unless it's a super close-up of an eye and one of them just happens to be over here. I mean, I find no reason to do that whatsoever. And I've refocused all of that attention towards this side. And then this silhouette here needs to get fixed as well. Be careful. Remember that whole silhouette thing. You just don't want to hide detail like this. You need this detail. You hid it behind this random boulder and you didn't have to. This is all eye candy. This is all really, really, really important. Really important for us to see this. We want to see this. This is all what we want to see. Alright, so you can see now my eyes are really trapped in here. All that we're missing next is some like basic rock structures. So let's see, the light's coming out of this side. Just some basic patterns just to tie this beautiful piece together just like that. Okay, so let me see what I can do just with this really quickly so we can get the read. Okay. Alright, keep myself zoomed out. Blend some areas together. Come on, smudge tool, don't fail me now. Right. So I want to trap my viewers' eyes in here. I want them to get lost in this. I want them to look further and further into the distance and guess what's coming next in this journey. And if we give them information that leads them outside of that center of the canvas, we're no longer inviting them to continue on with the journey. We're inviting them to ignore it, to move on. And that's not good storytelling. You're a storyteller. You may think you're just an artist and you're exempt from all that writing, but you still have to write. There's still a lot of responsibility on your part to show us what it is you're trying to say. Okay, so this rock here is just too clean, so I'm going to give it some more detail, more eye candy here, sharp edges that I'm not going to blend. And what I want to do basically is carry this brightness up just a little bit higher, just as a halo that hits above that rock. And select the inverse and just blend outside of it, or darken that just a little. So, sorry, I was going on to this, but then I got sidetracked because I forgot about that piece, but let's continue. This light here, before we get to, so we started in a light environment that was pretty much this color. So before we get to yellow, which you just jumped straight into, you skipped green and yellow, you went straight into orange. How did this happen? The rule says these are all a railway apartment, meaning all of these are connected by one door. If you want to get to yellow, you got to go through green. That light environment isn't just going to allow you to jump into yellow just like that. It's going to edit the yellow as a see-through film, a transparent film in the air. The air has the color of the light environment in it. It's not going to let this orange just come through like that. So what we have to do is create that exact physical film, that color layer. Grab this and just throw it over the character. Now I know your character is supposed to be an opposite color, but that opposite color would not exist. The light environment is too strong, it's not allowing it. So what is the color that comes next? So before, you see, it was just too orange. It was an alien orange. It does not work like this. It does not work like this, period. But there is a color that you can use that is warmer than this light environment, that is also in between yellow, which you can't reach at this current time, and this color, which is like a blue-green, or a really, really deep green. And then at the very, very hottest point of the flame, you can go ahead and hit yellow, but only the hottest point of the flame. As you know, light feeds color, and yellow is the brightest primary color. Write that back to me. Yellow is the brightest primary color, meaning that if the darkness here is just too dark to allow yellow to sit and orange to sit down here, or yellow and orange are very, very close. Meaning that the only way we're allowed to use that super saturated yellow is just in the actual place of the flame. Remember, I told you, you're allowed to use no man's land on any kind of light source in your painting, and a flame here is the light source, as well as the stars. So I'm gonna throw that right there, and then cast some of that light over here. It's not really reflective unless there was like a glass surface here on the rocks, which is possible in an alien landscape. And that yellow has a warmth to it, so I'm going to get color. And then I'm going to get the orange. And the orange is feeding, right now the yellow here is feeding that orange, so we don't have to worry too much about breaking the rules. The yellow is its own tiny little light environment all in itself. And it's allowing that that orange to come through. But everything else, everywhere else, especially the ground, which is dominated by the superior light environment, the primary light source illuminating this whole world, and the tiny object in it is that orange, that blue-green. And that's what needs to sit on everything around here. And after we set that nice blue-green up, then we can throw in the yellow, and it's in the hottest spot. This whole area here needs to be just a little more green. And then after that, we can start throwing in. What's left really is no longer when we mix those two together, and we bring in the film, what's left, the color that results is like a pale brown. And that's what we throw around here. Pale brown that's a little bit warmer. So something like this. One of these. This. Not pure yellow and not orange. This is the remainder. It's like adding and subtracting. This is the color that's left over here. And that's a more realistic rendition of what happens when a yellow flame burns in a really foggy, really dim environment. And then of course we need the general halo of light around the character, which we can use as the exact shade of the object here. And then of course we need to cast the shadow of the dude, because he does stand in the way of the glow in certain areas, like a silhouette, so just behind him. Merge down, delete. Before, do you see how unusual that orange was? It just does not belong there. We can't just use it. There are rules that we have to follow in order to use that. And if you must, I'll drop tool this exact color. If you must use that color on anything, you can use it on the flame. And you'll be allowed to use it on the flame. I'll use that exact shade on the flame. And you get away with it because it's a flame. Alright? So can anyone explain to me what I've been doing? Can anyone explain everything that I've covered so far? We'll take a look at the before and after real quick. Yellow is the brightest primary. Yes. Okay. So when it comes to the rest of these objects, I think what we need to see is a brighter horizon all around, or a brighter sky in certain areas. I'd love to see just a little bit more of a fade in these objects. Instead of them having their own color, they just have the brightness in that distance. And it's not really brightness, it's just the air gets thickest in the distance. And so it acts like there's more fog ahead of us, but that's just the extra distance ahead of us. And this will again invite the eyes towards the center of the canvas instead of the outsides of the canvas. You don't want to invite eyes outside of the canvas. You don't want to tell them, hey, you can leave my painting anytime you want. Okay? Refocusing on the point of interest. Fixed unnatural edges that aligned. Excellent. Refocusing the composition. Keeping the observer inside the painting. How not to distract the viewer and ambient light. Excellent. Light environment influences other colors. Something like that. Yes. Beautiful. I love that. I love that you guys are paying attention. Alright, so all I'm going to do now is, you always have to think of this as a thumbnail, and if you're confused, just go right back down to the thumbnail. So just grayscale your painting, basically. And if it doesn't pass, if there's some random spike of light and random contrast at the edges of the canvas that should otherwise be just completely ignored, you need to fix that and mute them. When we work with color, we can distract ourselves very quickly. Color is it doesn't let you see values as well as, obviously grayscaling. And we want to see those values. So I'm just fixing these edges here. Okay. And I'm just going to try to get some more brightness here in the distance. Just on the base. Just something that is a little warmer. Kind of gives us more to look forward to in the distance. And then this color is exactly what these objects here fade into. So this is the exact color of this film that we throw over everything. This shade. And that way it really feels like it's in the distance instead of it having its own color. So I'll get the color and then throw that over there. This one and this one seem to have the same contrast. I'm going to try to make it so that they don't have the same contrast. Lots and lots of lassoing. So other than all of this, this is a beautiful painting. I think you made the scale perfect as well. The character feels like they're in an epic landscape. Everything is really fully sized, supersized. And I love to see that in a fantasy landscape when people experiment with scale, something that we don't really see in this world that much. There we go. And desaturate. Or, never mind. Color. Just like that. So you've got a little bit of purple in here. It shouldn't be monochromatic at all. There's no reason why it should be. But just be aware that you have some purple. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to guide the eyes exactly like as if I'm drawing an actual line, but I'm going to draw the line with these highlights that I'm throwing across the ground, across the floor of the environment, and I'm going to lead the eyes. Everything that I'm illuminating is deliberate, so I can lead the eyes through this entire path that keeps them trapped in. Just like that. And then darken. Altogether, just darkening the outsides. So darken. Just going to throw that in some shadow. And throw the upper areas here in some shadow. This here should not be that bright. It's not that important. The edge of this area is not that important. This halo around this rock seems too deliberate. This rock should actually be blurred just a little bit more. And now that I've done that, this whole section seems a little bit dark. So now everything is refocusing back towards the center. Are there any questions that I missed that you guys want to repeat to me? Or does anyone have any questions? What was the biggest thing you learned out of this challenge? For those who participated, what did you learn most? See how this side of the canvas felt empty before, but now it's starting to feel a little more full. And this area here is just a little too dark too soon. Just need to highlight that. Oh. Just use some of that. I'll smudge the rest. Okay. Light environment influences other colors. Don't pull focus from your focus point. Don't merge tangents. The light source of the environment affects other colors. Refocus point of interest, creating more interesting shapes, trapping us in the center of the canvas. The center of the canvas instead of the outside. Light influences other colors. Paint rocks. I got gray hair now. You learned how to paint rocks. Yeah, terraforming is really the hardest thing that I had to go through, and I'm still struggling with it. It is like I'm at a more balanced point than I was before, but definitely it was problematic. So the sky is almost always lighter, except in a pitch black night scene. Everyone write that back to me. That's a really, really important little fact. If you make the sky too dark in your paintings, you're basically throwing your painting away in the garbage. The sky needs to be a little bit lighter. The sky needs to create that silhouette that we're looking for. So if it's too dark, all around just too dark, it really will throw off your canvas. We need to see that the objects in the foreground are what have that lightness to them. So when we just lighten it as a whole, just around the entire canvas, and then darken just the outskirts, we really create a better look. So I'm gonna try this again. I just want you guys to have the full experience of the before and after. So I'm gonna try to lasso everything. Let me find an interesting story to talk about. So when we were kids, my sister and I had like the biggest crazy fan love for Vegeta. Or I've talked about this before. And we used to draw comic books. Like we used to draw. We loved drawing. So we used to make up our own little comic strips about Vegeta's adventures. So the theme was Vegeta always manages to lose his dignity somehow. It was just so funny because that's something that they recently did in one of the videos. He's so always obsessed about his honor and his dignity. So we made a comic book of situations where he really like gets in a really bad situation. One of them was that he like I don't know what he did, but he ended up underwear. He just in his underwear. Um, in a Tarzan scene, but it was all like he stumbled into becoming Tarzan. It was really funny. You had to be there. But he had to save Bulma, and in order to save Bulma, it was like really hot, so he took off his shirt. You know, us fangirls, we love that shit. And we gave him like crazy muscles. And then he found Bulma and he had to come back, but he was nude, so everyone was on the vines, but like with their eyes closed because they were really ashamed. So he forced everyone to close their eyes while they're swinging through the vines in the jungle, and they all just crash. Really, really stupid story, but good times. They all hit the trees because Vegeta forced everyone to close their eyes for the sake of his dignity. Oh my god, I've got so much more to do. Alright. So one time, me and my brother were biking through the neighborhood, and a fly got in my eye. Actually, like a fly got trapped in my eye. I blinked it in, it got trapped under my eyelid. It was gross as fuck. And my brother was really, really squeamish, poor thing. But at that moment, he was just like, yo, because my nickname was Lula. So he was like, yo, Lula, don't move, don't move. And like he was so strong for me, and he was like, okay, I'm gonna try to take it out. Oh my god! I tried to take out the fly out of my eye, and he was so strong. That little kid, he was so strong. Now he's in the army. Now my brother's in the army. He's such a badass. But yeah, he was so tough for me. And he got the fly out. How does a fly get trapped in your eyeballs? You know, like what the fuck is that? That that was me. That was my luck. Alright, so select inverse. I'm going to darken the side of this rock because there's no reason why it should be brighter. You brightened it because there were some stars here, but really the rock should have been receding into some shadow. Dragon Ball Z, crazy muscles, la gasp. I heard that perspective relies on scale and that colors can distract from proper rendering. Yes, absolutely, Smitic. Spot on. Degrading Vegeta. What's rule 34? Fucking flies, man. I know. What the fuck is wrong with that fly? It was out to get me. So every one of these rocks should recede into shadow. Oh, I didn't select that area. All right. So before really, really dark, after a little bit lighter, but we still have to erase the edges away. So remember, it can't just be bright consistently through the whole thing. Yeah, I think I have some of the Vegeta comic book strips that we made. I might be able to share them if I get her permission. Oh man, that was so funny. So before, after, just a little bit brighter to refocus the canvas. I'm going to darken just the outsides since it is nighttime. Just the very outsides of the painting need to be darker. But we need to have that silhouette in certain rock formations here. Or else it really doesn't prove to be like, we lose form, we lose opportunities to show off the edges and silhouettes. The silhouette of an object plays a big role in its form. Alright, so one last thing that I would fix is this rock right here. This one seems to be showing the same contrast as a rock in front of it. And it just needs to be one darkened just a little bit, like that. And then illuminate illuminated on the sides. But in another situation, Vegeta goes to a yogurt shop with his daughter. And it's like a kiddie's place, so he ends up like beating someone up for offering him. It's like kids are so weird. I'm just thinking about why we put Vegeta in those situations. It's so sadistic. And so he gets forced to sit in a kiddie chair with a kitty ice cream cup and a kitty spoon. And like the guy who served the ice cream in the background has like he's like all like dead, and he's got like a bandage on his head, and he's just dead. And Vegeta's just sitting there in a really, really small chair. But he's like so big. I don't know why we put Vegeta through that stuff. But I don't know, we thought it was really funny. So before the eyes trail away, this beautiful system you have here is so spot on. It needs to stay the center of the painting. Actually, let me just, I think you had some highlights in there already. I'm just going to get rid of that. I tried to pull it off with a soft brush. It's not going to work. So before, after. And with that, just that stuff, just those changes, this is a really, really good landscape. It's turned into something that's a little bit more focused. You might want to create, because right now what you're doing is you're creating a trail where he's traveled and where he's going. So you might want to have a little bit of an extra brightness here, just connecting the foreground with the midground. Remember, you want to seam the layers of depth together. So write that back to me. You want to seam them together. You want to stitch them together, and you stitch them together by connecting them somehow, with transitions, with any kind of tool you could use to connect them. So it could be I don't know, anything, a ribbon from a flag, something to connect the foreground and the back. Mostly it's at the floor. It's at the floor of this piece here. I don't think that the shadow would be trailing this way. I think it would stay mostly under the horse and then a little bit behind, because the shadow right now is above the object. So it's going to cast the shadow in the opposite direction, which is down. So I think that his shadow should be like just limited to that. This painting needs more sparkles, damn it. Seam the layers together. Excellent. Streaming while watching a stream. Nailed it. Welcome, welcome. Alright, so let me see if anyone wanted to... Tarzan Vegeta, yeah. Yeah, those sparkles, they were just, they were a little bit too distracting. Not a little bit, a lot of it. Alright, so I'm just going to get rid of that shadow because I don't have time to render it properly, but here it is. And I would create like this. Sorry, I keep thinking I'm done and then I have another idea. I would kind of make it monochromatic just around him only. So I would choose the color of the light environment and just invites that monochromatic look outside. Because that's really what it feels like when you're outside of the glow around him. Everything gets a little monochromatic. But this glow right here should just be all around him. Just like that, to make it feel warm, to make him feel like the warm, kind of like Traveler, the only human thing in the entire environment, and everything else is just a dead landscape. I hate using this word, juxtapositioning, but that's really what the word is. Two opposing values against each other, and they create meaning by being beside each other. They create meaning just by being placed beside each other, adjacent to each other. What if there's sparkles on the ground around the character? Well, at that point you have enough light source to express them. Feel free to add them in. They're part of the detail scope. They're on the road of the detail, just like this. Oops. They're on the road of the detail, so you can go ahead and add those sparkles. They belong there. They're on the trail. As long as they're on that trail, a line of sight, that line of sight right here, you're good to go. Okay? So it's not really a measured rule of thirds. It's not really some sort of crazy business. It's just following the simple principles that come with organizing your canvas just a little bit better. So we've refocused the highlight. There's a massive shift to the left, just like that, if you notice it. So before, after. And that extreme sunlight level, no man's land value compared to everything else. I guess it feels like no man's land right up here. Oh, it was no man's land. I just picked the wrong area. This no man's land value, this is, you're not allowed to use this unless it's a light source. This felt more like a sunlight. And if this was the sun, this whole sky would be super, super bright. But this was just out of place. The light environment was limited in that way, so it became a darker environment, allowing these colors to shine through just a little bit more. So you don't get that pure orange at all. Alright. Someone complained on my channel that I repeat myself too much, and I've always repeated myself no matter where I taught, whether it was in uni, whether it was tutoring. I'm always going to repeat myself. I'm always going to repeat myself. If you don't like that teaching method, you can go somewhere else. I invite you to. I'm not going to change the way I teach because, well, you're too impatient to do your arithmetics. I don't know what the term is. Just that study pattern where you're repeating over and over and you're memorizing the terms that come with it. I repeat myself. It's how I've learned to do anything. Repetition is the road to perfection. You're not going to find any other faster way to get there. Repetition, repetition, repetition. Alright, so we're done with that one. I hope this helped you. I really invite you to make these changes. This is a really, really powerful portfolio piece, and that was the point of this environment study. By the way, the Witch's Hovel, which is the next theme, is going to be all sketched. It's going to be a sketched environment. So get out your pencils and get out your gray backgrounds and start going. I'm always going to repeat myself. Repetition hammers into the head. It's fine. Repeating helps me remember. Repeating yourself is great, I think. Thank you. Yeah, I repeat stuff through my videos as a whole, and I repeat stuff through a video as a whole because people miss stuff, and not everyone watches my videos religiously, so there's going to be themes that some people don't see or catch me teach, so I'm always going to make myself available to repeat something. I'm going to make it so that it's painless for me to repeat it. I used to be so impatient I couldn't repeat anything to anyone. But if I'm one of those teachers, and I know you guys have probably met these teachers in the past, teachers who hate repeating themselves, they are the worst teachers in the world. They should quit their job and go be like a fucking, where impatience is a good thing for your job. I don't know, go be like a ticket master or something. I don't know, man. I don't even know where impatience is a good thing. But you need patience to repeat yourself, and patience is something I work towards as a teacher. You put a folder for the next challenge, or we start with that? I will put a folder. I will put some resources for you, but it's going to be a drawn. It was going to be a sketched environment. So you're going to use pencils to sketch the environment. Traditional or digital doesn't matter. Just as long as you sketch it. So it's not going to be about thumbnails just yet. I'm going to probably ask you after the challenge is over. We're going to move on to the thumbnail version and the painting version of what you sketched. But I think the reason why it's so important for us to do a sketched environment is because we need to learn about the anatomy of a landscape. We need to learn what kind of rocks to use and what kind of trees to use and how to make the rock look more like a rock, and where to use grass and where to use flowers and how to draw leaves. And it's basically a how to draw whole thing. It's going to make you draw better, and it's going to make you fill your canvas with real content. So when you sketch, when you go back down to a line, you have to think content. When you get thumbnails, you can just throw whatever details together and they read, but when you're sketched, it's a little bit more challenging. Okay, so we have a couple of issues. I'm just going to point to them because we're running out of time. So I'm just going to point to exactly what needs to be changed. Foreground is darker than background. This is wrong. You need to switch these values together. This is a good silhouette, but the sun I feel like is too strong. And I don't know what this guy is doing. I feel like he's going like, hey, yeah, you, buddy, you, because he was just like, yeah, buddy, look, I climbed all the way at the top of the at the top of the, look where I am now. He's like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, buddy, you did it. That's what I feel. That's what I'm reading. Because he's like pointing at him, it's like, yeah. Which is fine if you were going for it. But my line of, my eyes they're just moving this way. And then this is traveling back down. So it's good. We're stuck here. It's pretty good. But you have a couple of depth issues. Apart from, what's happening between these two characters. I really don't know what's happening between these two characters. But the foreground, these trees here, I can't paint over. Istebrak, stop. Stop, Istebrak, stop. I can't paint over, but they need to be way darker. This needs to be lighter, and I'm so tempted right now to just do that and just show you the befores and afters. Also, the colors you've chosen are a little bit primary. We need to have a more stronger color wash. You know what? Fuck this. I'm gonna just paint over it. No, I don't have any time. Damn it. Okay, let me see if I can. If I can't, then I wish I had the PSD. That way I wouldn't have to lasso so much. But this over here, I like the distortion, so you don't have as much detail. This is really, really cool. But you need to make this background lighter and this foreground here darker. Okay. I'm so tempted. I'm sorry I gave in. Sorry, guys. You're stuck here till I'm done. Oh my god, I used the wrong one. Holy cannoli. There we go. He needs to be just a little bit darker. Just like that. And the foreground just needs to be super black. Alright, so you need to make these values here just darker all the way. Alright, they need to be like this dark. So now it's starting to read a little bit better. And then once you're done that, throw in the general wash of the environment. So sometimes it's a warm. You start off with a really, really warm brown, because if it's sunlight outside. You can start with something like this. Oops. Oops. Damn it. And then move out of that. You can start wherever you need to start. If it's a cooler environment, if it's something like this, and all of the greens are really saturated and the sky is yellow, you can try something like that, but you have to start with a wash. There has to be the color of the environment. What's the color of the light? If it's a white yellow, then a lot of colors will be super saturated, so you'll get really good blues and really good greens. But the sky itself, you have to choose that it's either going to be blue with white clouds, or gray with no colors, or eerie, or no colored clouds with no blue or anything. And it's going to be sunset, and it's going to be warm. So you did choose sunset. So this whole environment should be a little bit. So you're starting off with this color here. It's a little too saturated. Start off with this color and then work out and saturate as you need to. Green will be warmer. You'll have a more warmer yellow green than anything else. But yeah, the background should always be the lightest. And then the foreground is just the darkest. This area here seems a little empty. You might want to add some detail. I like how you added the rocks here, but they're a little bit bright. They're just unusually bright rocks. They're super white, chalky white rocks. Okay. And then we have this one. This is another one of those examples where we don't have enough of a coolness in the shadows, but a really, really, really bright sun. So we have a nearly like a yellow sun, yellow blue skies kind of situation, which is really easy to paint. But I think this would be more of a silhouette all around. This whole system right here. It needs to be darker. And then after you do that, you have a really, really awesome chance to just cast some wonderful cast shadows just along here. So these cast shadows might have hit just like that. Oh man, yes. Darken. So you could have done a little something like that. Look at that. That's yummy, right? And then cooled off the saturation. So when we have this kind of color trying to be so saturated, you know, in its shadow realm, it's just not going to do that. You need to cool down the color. And you cool down the color by choosing the color of the environment, the opposite color of the environment, which is pretty much a purple in this case because that yellow in the sky. So I'm going to choose a little something like that. And I'm going to throw it over everything. All of that orange, that yellow in here is impossible. The yellow in the ground becomes impossible. It doesn't happen because the yellow hasn't come through. The yellow isn't being fed by the sunlight. It's in opposition to it. That's too saturated. So when you oversaturate, do not oversaturate shadows, basically. Write that back to me. I'm going to cut that in half. So now what we're doing is we're countering by using purple. We're countering. We're still in the reds. Take a look. We're still in the reds. We're not even in purples, but because we've countered all of the yellow in here, we've moved into the purples. Okay, we can't use that. And then this purple everywhere else where the sunlight doesn't reach. So this exact color. Here, here, anywhere where there's a shadow. And because that shadow is further away from its origin, it becomes blurrier. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. So it becomes just a little bit blurrier. And it just a little bit faded. No, that's too faded. Because the further from the origin it gets, the more faded it is. Let me duplicate this shit. Merge down. Okay. And now anywhere where we don't have that, you know, that color, where we don't have any of this happening, we can have that saturation. So I'm going to get the color and then get that blue sky going. So that blue sky you're using here is way too green. The sunlight is strong enough to reveal that blue. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that blue in there. Just color mode. I'm going to delete anywhere where this is happening. It's starting to feel a little bit better. And then, of course, the ground can't be this saturated. It needs to be a little bit more sandy, less red soil, more pale, more of a pale yellow. So we can use color modes actually to do this. Something like this nice white sandy color. It's more white than anything. Oops. It's more like a sandy white. And then the objects in the distance, of course, are fading away with that blue. To the furthest points of that. And that's the best we can do at this time. Just from a good starting point. But before you were way too saturated. We didn't have any of those rules where we have all of that light environment rule. And we didn't have anything interesting happening with those massive ribs that are standing in the way of the sunlight. They can even be darker and cooler. So color, I'm just going to throw that cool just over the bottoms of every one of these. And not just that, we can have that nice saturation ring around all of these shadows. There's like this ring of saturation. just like that, causing these shadows here. That's really what working in an environment, what you have to do. You have to be able to create depth. That's the hardest thing about an environment. Let's take a quick look at everyone else's work before we call it a day. Okay, so this one's great. Just please remember the sky is brighter. That's a good place to start with fixing this. Just a brighter sky. Everything you've learned so far, watch my day one of this and watch today's. And maybe you'll learn a little bit more about, where to place the detail, you need to do some form studies so you can make this feel more like a sculpture or an actual formation of the skeleton of the skull than, a couple of blobs. I really think that you can take that. This is a really, really good placement. The skull is a really, really good placement. You have a nice knack here for filling up a canvas. You let some of the sky visible, so that's great. I think you just need to do a little bit more research and close work with referencing. Over here you could have filled the canvas a little bit more, thrown some longer cast shadows. That would have been really, really cool. Just a little bit more here. And have these super, super bright points shine right through, creating that white line. In fact, I think I'll just show you what I mean. Okay, so this in the back here needs like this value. So I'm just going to do really, really solid blocks. And then this in the foreground needs that. And once we do that, we can have these super, super long cast shadows. Just move right across. And then you have that long value, that long stretch of white that reflects back. So snow, I haven't seen anyone take on like a snow kind of setting, or like a winter setting for this. But a tundra is as much a desert as a desert. But just to have that beautiful kind of desaturation here in the shadow. Blurrier the further it gets. These are all great opportunities here to mess around with that. And all of this is you can find it in a reference, all of it. And this object here in the distance needs to be faded just a little bit more. Maybe some more cast shadows off other objects. Sorry, that's my air conditioner. Longer cast shadows like that. Oops. But this is a good thumbnail, and I think you should have kept going. You should have tried. I don't know if this person decided on a final or they submitted a final, but this is a really, really good setup right here. As for this character, they don't feel human, they feel more like a bionicle, which is really, really cool. I love bionicles, but yeah, it could be just a little bit different. He seems to be relieved from the shadow, so maybe his shoulder pads are getting a little bit more light on them, and stuff like that. Of course, the light source here has to be no man's land as well, in order for that to have happened on the snow, if it is snow. And then just like that, and we continue filling the canvas up. One object responding to the light source after the next. So every object has to be treated as a cube in a light environment separately and then united together. I love these sketches. I wanted to talk about this. I love what this looks like, and I hope you can bring some of that to the next challenge. This one here, again, refocus your light environment, and if it's sunset, we're not going to have this color just yet in the sky. The dominating color would be the warms and the pinks and all of those warm colors that dominate the sky. Also, it feels really, really like clip art and like a pop-up book. So try to give more side, or the z-axis of the side of the cube more. These are Marcos. My favorite one is this one right here. But because this isn't such a great silhouette, we would have a bit of a darker value on this guy, just at least at the tops, just at the very tops of him. we would have that darker value and we'd have some of that light shine through, just like that. These here seem to have too symmetrical an environment, so maybe just interrupting, someone's throwing something here to interrupt that perfect horizontal view. The reason why this is so awesome is because of that Dutch angle. Really, really awesome work. And then this one, again, the light environment really doesn't match a desert. I mean, you can go for that alien look, but I would prefer something a little bit more sandy, so you're working from the references that I gave you. But that's it. The Witch's Hovel, I'll upload the resource pack for that as soon as possible. So I will not be running a poll for the next theme. For a very good reason. I think we need to continue less on character design and more on environments. And I want you guys just to show me what you can sketch, and can you draw a tree? And I want to see some more trees, I want to see some more rocks, I want to see some more architecture, so buildings. So Witch's Hovel is like a little building, a little shack. Either it's embedded in the trees, or it's just outside on the floor of the forest, or it's suspended in between a bunch of trees like a tree house. Or it's like a hobbit hole. Really, there's so many things that you can do with this concept. It can be a really, really clustered forest, jungle-like, with hanging vines, or it can be an open kind of a clearing in the forest. With the sky above. There's so many ways that you could take this next challenge, but I'll be posting everything for it soon. But I've looked at all of them. You guys did great for this environment. I can't believe how awesome the response was, and I encourage you to constantly try stuff you're not used to. Always try stuff you haven't tried before. This environment was inviting you to try something, go into unknown waters that you've never attempted before. Design something that isn't that you're not that versed with in your vocabulary. So that's it. I hope the next challenges also really push you towards that same thinking pattern and that same learning environment. A learning environment, if it's too comfortable, it's not a learning environment. We need to have a little bit more of a challenge, and be more uncomfortable in order to really wake up our survival skills. I'm so sorry. The metaphors will never stop. That's something else you're going to have to get used to. Yeah, so it's start as soon as possible. I already gave you a brief on it, so I'm going to be uploading the details on it this week or this weekend. And just get started. Start sketching some trees, some forests. At least start there. Look up some references, then I'll be uploading some references of my own soon enough. You can find everything that you need. Once I upload the reference, you can just go to istebrak.com. Everything you need is there, everything. And I'll be uploading the resource pack in the community tab right here. So this is where the environment challenge was uploaded, the resource pack for it, but it will be found here at istebrak.com/community. If you want to upload stuff, just go to Google Community. If you want your stuff back, just go to Facebook. Twitter if you want to stay connected or ask me questions, and YouTube, of course, for recordings or everything else. Brushes, Portrait Studio, and my books, and everything else that I offer is in my store. If you're interested in that, of course, it's not required of you to buy anything to participate. This is completely open for everyone. So thank you everyone for watching today. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.